Yes, thank you for joining us today, as well as, welcome on behalf of the entire council. All right, well, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2021. And I think it's a pretty exciting time for us as a council. We've got our annual report and annual report presentation coming up. Big thank you to Tiffany for continuing to sort of coordinate and also adjust the time of that presentation. So I hope everyone is doing well, staying safe, and I wanted to kind of offer a few opening remarks before we went into our agenda. One of the first things I wanted to talk about is just kind of a reminder about our annual report. So there's been some edits made to that. Tiffany and I have discussed that, as well as kind of gone into that document a few times. But I think in a way, what we want to do is offer a broad swath of the work we've been doing and how that really connects with our 10 duties as assigned by the City Council. And then in our annual report presentation, which I believe is February 12th, we can offer some more details, as well as be prepared to answer some specific questions about specific projects and directions and future work that we see for ourselves. So today, I know we're going to talk about the annual report, both in terms of submitting that written component so that the marketing department can kind of jazz it up and make it look nice, as well as schedule some time for us to practice. And within that, we'll kind of get a sense of who'd like to present and perhaps which parts. And then we'll talk about our new business. So I think I misspoke a moment ago and said that we're scheduled to present February 12th, but I believe it's actually February 9th at 4:30 p.m. when I look at our agenda. So that is going to be a virtual presentation, as we can expect most of our work to be virtual at this point. And I hope that everyone can put that on their calendar, because whether or not you're presenting in the annual report, it's still great to have everybody there and ready to answer questions, or at least just participate in the process as a council person. All right, so then let's kind of move to our next item on the agenda, which is approval of our previous meeting minutes. Did everyone receive the minutes from our last meeting? Oh, that would have been our November meeting.
Yes.
I can also pull them up now.
Yes, I received them.
Does anyone have any comments, edits, questions regarding the minutes?
No comments,
everyone. No.
Regarding me.
All right, well, if we don't have any comments or edits or suggestions to the minutes, would someone like to motion that they be approved?
Before we do that, Megan, I realize we did not roll call attendance.
Oh, all right.
So I can go ahead and do that, or if you would like to, either way.
I'm happy to do that. So just go around the room and state who is here. All right. So Megan Regan, chair, present.
Scott Andrew Bowen, vice chair, is present.
Carol,
Carol Eichmeyer, present.
Jacqueline,
Jacqueline Ramsey, present.
David,
David Harrison is present.
Brandon,
Brandon Williams is present.
Timbila, I think Timbila is on listening mode, so she is here. She had messaged us, but
I did hear her speak up a moment ago. Okay, I do see in the chat she did say here. You might be right.
mhm. And then thank you to our guests and other participants who are here with us.
So I do believe we're missing Michael Banner at this point.
Correct.
And all other members are present. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, I forget to do that. So what I'm going to do going forward is put it on the agenda, and that'll help me remember to do it, because I consistently forget that formality. So thank you for the reminder. All right, we're back to kind of where we were, which was the minutes from November.
I would like to make a motion to accept the minutes from November of 2020.
Second.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the
If we
minutes
could
are,
actually say each person's name and how they vote.
so call each person and then allow them to directly vote, okay?
Yes, please.
All right. Jacqueline,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Brandon,
You're muted.
Aye.
and Timbila. Timbila texted, put it in the chat and said yes. Okay, so the minutes are approved as received. Thank you, everyone. All right, so let's then move into our old business from our agenda. First item up there is the annual report, and here Tiffany is really graciously helping us coordinate with marketing to kind of convert it from a Google Doc that we're all editing into that nice, pretty brochure that we saw last year, which is much easier to read and has some great sort of visual appeal to it. And in that regard, we need to get it to marketing by tomorrow, which is the 15th. Has everyone had a chance to kind of take a look at that Google Doc recently and make it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Anyone else?
Yes, I've reviewed it as well.
I reviewed it too.
I
It's fine.
reviewed it.
It looks like I'm the only one who can say no, that I have not had a chance to look at it.
All right, well, hey, listen, I appreciate everyone that has looked at it, as well as Scott, and let me know that you're going to be our last set of eyes on it. So do you think you might have a chance to take a look at it sometime either this evening or tomorrow before we kind of turn it over to marketing?
Yes, I can do that tonight.
I do think it would be helpful, Tiffany, to perhaps pull that up now if we all just kind of want to take a look through it. Some of the things I'll sort of point out are that we followed a very similar format and content breadth as we did last year. And so part of it is really just describing who we are. Describing who we are, our members, our 10 duties as defined by the city, and then going into, like I said, more of an overview or breadth perspective of some of the projects that we've worked on. I see that. I will make that edit that it is now the fairgrounds. Do you have it pulled up in edit mode right now, Tiffany?
I do. I can adjust that now. Johnny, it's Carolina Classic now, correct? Do you all know? Yes. Okay. Very good.
And so certainly on some of these like activities, accomplishments, guest speakers, conferences, that all sort of waned around COVID. And I think in a, for all the right reasons, but there was, for the most part, these sections were all sections that were on our annual report last year, but there was a few like the conferences and such that sort of we took off because we just weren't able to do that to the extent this year under COVID that we did last year. But here, if there were any activities, community groups and partnerships that sort of I forgot about, especially among some of the members who are returning the last few years on the council, please just kind of take a look and remind me, right? So I know that before COVID hit, we had Hope Winston-Salem come in. And I know also Scott continued working with Hope, connecting them with some of the Liberty Street vendors. Certainly we met with Margaret with Beta Verde, as well as the last two. So there, especially if anyone had partnerships or kind of remembered something that perhaps I didn't from earlier in the year, please either kind of send me an email or pop that into the Google Doc.
Excuse me, I don't have the most recent annual report. I apologize. I was referring to the 2020. Is this the one that we had access to, the same one here?
Yeah, so I think that the Google Doc that we all have the link to edit is this one, our 2020 annual report. You should have also, I think Tiffany sent out a PDF of our previous year annual report, which was not precisely an annual report. It was our first report, so it covered about a year and a half. But this is the working document one that we're preparing to present. Mm-hmm. Is this the one that you had?
Yes, I believe on the one that I received, it had only 9 of the 10 elements of the core values. So I don't know if that was, this may be a different one. The one I had 9 elements instead of 10.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So to be honest, I know I went in a couple weeks ago and worked on the formatting because what I did was copy and pasted our duties. Some of the line spacing was unclear how many duties there were, like they kind of blended into one another. And so it may have just looked like it was 9 because I didn't hit return at the right spot.
Okay, no problem.
Right, so like if you look kind of at number 10, undertake such duties as may be requested by the mayor and council, I think that was one of those examples where there wasn't a hard return and it may just have looked as 1, not 2.
Megan, we also have the PowerPoint style one as well that we sent out to folks.
Correct. Do you want to pull that one, well, any other thoughts or comments on the annual report? The actual written report part that we're looking at now.
I'm not obviously a part of the council, but I do think that we should include in activities and accomplishments the grant that we received. Because while we did initiate the pilot program, it doesn't have mention of the grant. So I don't know what you all think about that.
I agree. I certainly agree. And I think that's appropriate as well in terms of acknowledging the Community Food Strategies Network.
What are the priorities with regards to the report? What is it that the city council and the mayor, what are the expectations in terms of the deliverables, you know, in terms of the annual report? What are we capturing as far as in contrast to what we presented last year?
Again, would you like to answer? Would you like me to speak to that?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you could clarify the question. So Tiffany, if you want to give it a go first and then.
Yeah, so obviously we have this ordinance that created the Urban Food Policy Council and that City Council approved. And so these are the duties as outlined. Right. The purpose of this annual report is to give City Council a sense of what you all have been working on. Of course, they have a sense through updates in media knowing the Liberty Street Market is in place, but this is going to really give them the opportunity to hear from you directly and ask you questions about the efforts and also give them a broad sense of how you might move forward from here. Does that answer your question?
Not really, but no, I was just trying to determine what are the biggest differences between what was presented last year, like what type of information or what type of you know, what type of modifications are being attributed to this current one as opposed to the one that was presented last year? Like what are we capturing? I know that we have some elements as far as, I guess we're measuring the, I guess the success of different initiatives.
Yeah, so I think I understand what you're asking, Brennan. Some of it is quite similar in that it's, here is who we are. So if someone just reads the annual report and is unfamiliar with our council, is unfamiliar with our sort of directives as laid forth by City Council, the City Commission is unfamiliar in general, just with the Urban Food Policy Council, they get a broad overview. And then there's some specifics as to what we did to try to accomplish the duties as set forth by the city. So there's a decent amount of overlap in especially the structure. Here's the mission, here's the year we're reporting, here's why we exist from the city's perspective, and here's who's currently on the council. And then some of this stuff is a bit more dynamic and specific to the year. Here's who we did partner with, here's the projects we worked on, and here's the projects we think we're going to work on next year. In terms of some specifics in there, it's been my sense that the details are better left for when we present or if we are asked, rather than in what becomes a really nice glossy brochure that anybody could pick up and just have, you know, kind of like almost like, I don't know if this is the right word, but almost like a pamphlet for a business or an organization, right? Here's who we are, here's what we're about, and here's kind of a broad swath on what we've been doing. It doesn't give budget information. It doesn't really give data-driven results. but I would expect we'll get some of those questions when we present, or we sometimes get requests for that information outside of this kind of like what I said. It feels to me kind of like that glossy brochure that when you walk into a business you pick up, right?
Gotcha. And I guess that's kind of what I was, asking, because when you think, well, when I was thinking annual report, I was thinking kind of like a financial report, looking at some type of projections or some type of, measurements to see where we are, where we were, where we are and where we're going, some type of, aggregate data. So, that's kind of what I was kind of wondering. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have been, certainly. Specifically, we worked with Beta Verde a lot, which is the cobblestone farmers market. I know that both Ariana and Margaret attended the Liberty Street Market a number of times and also reached out to us, and myself and Tiffany met with Margaret as sort of CEO of Beta Verde about the Liberty Street Market and broader sort of visions of local level farmers markets. I have also been sitting in once every 2 to 3 months on a monthly statewide farmers market phone call. It's been a phone call or Zoom call during COVID, and it's about 20 to 25 small community farmers markets across the state. And mostly what we've been doing is sharing what's going on around COVID. That's really been the focus since I joined those meetings starting in June. But it's been really helpful, which markets have rules or regulations regarding certain PPE or COVID protocols and which ones just recommend it. How some of them, I know it was especially helpful for Liberty Street when we were planning it in terms of a few of the markets that we were able to identify that the city was coordinating the SNAP EBT versus organizations who were individually coordinating that.
It occurred to me, Megan, that we should probably in the community partnerships mention the, was it in Rockingham specifically, and naming that out, and also Fairgrounds Farmers Market, because that was another organization. Mostly I had spoken with them when we were trying to set up that SNAP EBT process, but it did make it possible for Liberty Street. Would you all be amenable to me adding that into the community presentations and partnership section?
Yes.
Yes.
Megan, do you recall the specific name for Rockingham's market? It is slipping my mind.
I am looking it up right now. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I will look it up and get it to you. I know I've got it.
And even on that end, you might want to include some of the vendors that we've been working with, because to a degree, those are a community partnership. They did provide the input into what days, what times, the SNAP EBT, whether that's a benefit in the marketing materials that we created for the market. But I don't know what you all think about that as well.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because we're a lot of those people were in the kind of the group we were charged to work with and help kind of raise their viability in the market area. So I think it's definitely a good idea to show that we're kind of meeting that criteria.
And I know so certainly the Forsyth Food Works, right? There's a connection there, but I think, I tried to identify that more in Michael's role on our council, but also Island Community, right? I know, especially in the beginning, Michael was really reaching out to a lot of the members through the island community. And we had a few vend at the market, especially in the beginning when the weather was a little different. So perhaps that, I mean, I'm not sure what you all think about listing that as a community partnership as well.
Yeah, I agree. I went into it with the mind frame that we was partnering with you.
Why don't you just,
Oh, hi, Michael. I didn't see that you had joined.
Yeah,
We gotta make
partner
sure I
outlay.
do the roll call.
Oh, yeah, I'm here now.
how about a category of vendors? Just say vendors, and then you could list some of them there. Not an all-inclusive list, just in case somebody gets left off. For example, you know the name of the guy that does the cotton candy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would be worried to not include everyone if we include some, right? So I would like us to have a discussion of that, right? So like, yeah, Jimmy, for example, I think is his name, was there quite a bit and really kind of rotated what he was vending each session. Happy Food was there a number of times. So I'm not sure. I think if we list only some, we should at least say this is a not complete list. What are some other folks?
How many different vendors did we have at the market? Is that what we're talking about at the Liberty Sheet, right?
Right.
I mean, I could pull up the spreadsheet, right? I want to say there was probably 15 to 16 that expressed interest. And then over the course of the pilot program, I mean, we have a spreadsheet and it shows who came each session. Each session, we tended to have 6, maybe 7 vendors, but I think there was around a dozen that were rotating in and out.
I think that's something good to capture on the report. Pardon me. I think that's the type of, some of that type of information will be pertinent to the annual report.
I agree.
You can kind of see, kind of use that as some type of benchmark to assess, the level of participation and to kind of help everyone else kind of get an idea of what, what type of participation took place.
Yeah, so it looks like there was 12 total over time. We never had 12 at any one time. But certainly we had some that came very regularly, right? So I'm just not sure exactly how to phrase that in a way, right? So like, for example, Michael, would it be better to say Island Z Community rather than Michael Banner and Denise Terry, right? We know Kitchen Acai, Happy Foods, but like Nikki Presley, for example, right? Like, would we list out individual names or would we list out the business names? Some of them had business names, some of them went by their first name, right? Like, so Hempress Farms also was there quite frequently. What do you, I guess I lean more towards like the organization or the business name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think if they're a
Probably what
business,
they're promoting their brand.
exactly.
How you doing, Scott?
Doing well, sir. Miss seeing you.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, so Tiffany, I'm gonna chat to you the names of the businesses. And they're Michael Island Z Community rather than,
But it would be Island Culture Z, yeah.
Island Culture ending in a Z.
A capital Z, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my recommendation is, I think this should just be on the written report part. But I know on the more presentation side, we could just say that we had 12 vendors instead of listing all of them. If they ask, we have it ready.
Indeed, and they will also have the PDF version available as well. There are a couple of, for example, Nikki Presley. I do think she has a CSA and has a business name. So what I will do is go ahead and message Nikki, perhaps Denise. Michael, I don't know if Denise uses a particular name for her brand, just to confirm what's the business name.
Yeah, I forgot Denise's business name, but she does have one. I remember right off. And Nikki does too.
Okay, so I will send them a text message.
Thank you, Tiffany. Other thoughts of things you all would like to see included?
I think I hadn't read the whole report, but some type of assessment with the land tenure. What's our standards on, you know, what urban farms we have, quote unquote, any type of support from city, if there is any, that's been committed towards the program. Those are a couple of things I would kind of like to see. Because for us to have an urban agricultural ordinance is being like greatly underused. And I think it should be like highlighted pretty much, you know, where that lack is. I think it'll be a pretty short list.
Yeah, so we do have, I think in our next steps or future work, I can't remember the exact phrasing of it, but I think that's where we have it. Should we put something more, Mike?
I hadn't seen it, my fault.
No, it's petite. It's one line. It just says like,
Exactly.
continue to work on, right?
Yeah. No, I would put something real right there. Like put, where are the urban farms? You know what I mean? It's touted like it's a real program in the city. So like maybe somebody reading this report would like to know where are the official urban farms. You know, that process is so hard to really navigate. It's at the space down there. I think y'all learned that. So, and then I think it got put on the back burner for a while. So I think it'd be good just to have those few urban farms listed. And then maybe next year we might have more listed or we have less listed. But, you know, isn't that pretty accessible information?
Accessible, like, I guess I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that.
Just so people know what impact has this policy the ordinance, what kind of impact has it had on the city or the lack thereof? Like, it's
So
more
perhaps
like,
maybe, sorry.
yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'd like to see it made clear. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying, you know, we're working on this or we're working on that, just make it clear, like, okay, we got 5 urban farms, you know, and this is what to look for moving forward, whether it's going to be made less of a priority with the housing situations, or whether it's going to be put back in the forefront. I don't know where that is with Dee Adams and the city council, but just to know where it is at this moment.
So do you think that should be on the future directions?
I think it should be
I
on the
think
now.
yeah, I mean, I think I might have put the vacant lot program and not phrased that correctly. If there it was more the urban agriculture program.
Yeah, urban agricultural ordinance.
Urban agricultural ordinance, that probably needs to be edited.
It's actually a UDO something. I don't have it right handy, but it's a UDO something. But for it to been in existence this many years, like, we need to start really, like, substantiating that. Let it be known, like, you know, is this something that we really looking to employ moving forward, or we just gonna keep it there like it's a victory just by, you know, achieving the ordinance itself? It hadn't really been used. And if it's reported out, then maybe the city could look at it and say, okay, why is there only 3 or 4 city lots being used in this ordinance? Maybe we should put more emphasis with that. Or people know that, you know, the process is being held up for a minute with whatever's going on, or whether, you know, just so people can know what's really going on with it. Because that should be one of the backbones of the of this whole movement, especially for people who don't have land access like that. This is the way that people can access land.
Yeah, so there I put in the chat a link to the ordinance that Michael is referring to, because there's a few elements of it. It was passed in 2015. So perhaps there's something, Michael, like assess the use and future directions of the urban agriculture ordinance.
Right. That's a good assessment, because you got Grow Winston and you got the ordinance. And at this later date, those shouldn't really be ambiguous. It should be some clarity in that. So, like, that's what I would be looking for in a report, just so people can look at it and say, okay, I want to be involved with the green Grow Winston. I see more benefit in that. Or maybe I can go holler at my councilwoman or councilman and find out how I can get more involved in this. But if it's not on the report, you know what I mean, people, it's just going to be a blind spot. So that's why I think it's kind of important to include. Because without growing the food, everything's going to depend on, you know, the handouts or whatever. Now, I know we got community gardens, and that's one of the things that we're supposedly going to speak more definition to in the summit, if I'm not mistaken, the difference between the community gardens and the urban farms and like a regular farmer from the rural sector. But just bringing a little more clarity to the people.
Good.
And the governance. It seems like the governance don't know a lot what's going on. You know, now I would even maybe, pardon me for kind of being lost on the timelines and stuff. I would also kind of think about, you know, one of your favorite hot spots, the chicken ordinance. I don't know if you had it on the thing, on the report, but I think that's kind of important too. Just so people know what kind of communities are we living in.
I do think there's one brief mention of doing that policy analysis for Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Okay.
Again, kind of to me on the report, our recommendation is to kind of go less and offer more detail in the presentation. I did put that though under one of our activities and accomplishments, but it was quite broad.
The assessment is quite broad.
The bullet on the annual report was just that we completed a policy announcement, analysis for Mayor Pro Tem Adams on the chicken pigeon policy.
Okay.
I'm hoping that we get a question on it and can talk about it, right?
Okay.
But
So
I didn't necessarily put any direct information from the analysis, right? I mean, kind of because you were there in that meeting as well. And, you know, so I think for some of our new council members, kind of the, you know, what I did is I got data from the city on the permits that have been issued since this chicken policy has been around, because we were asked to do a policy analysis, right? It sort of came about in a sort of, hey, we passed this agricultural promoting policy that allows people to keep residential chickens, pigeons, and other small birds, right? And the person that asked us about it kind of said, you know, I don't really ever hear much about it. So we did an analysis and looked at, well, how many permits have been issued over the years and distributionally across town, where? Because when the policy was passed, it was pitched as sort of a way to help people get protein on the plate, right? It's expensive. Protein's expensive, you know, and so if you can raise chickens that lay eggs, eggs are a great source of nutrients and protein, and they're not that cumbersome to sort of keep in your yard, right? But that not many people were using it, and that certainly was what we found. Not many people were using it. And part of it was the cost. The permit itself was costly, but what the permit specified in terms of the size of the coop and the number of chickens that you could have just wasn't that efficient if you compare it to the fact that you can walk into Food Lion and get a dozen eggs for 89 cents, right? And so there, the city was pretty responsive though. I mean, they significantly dropped the cost of the permit once we did the analysis, right? And so I think there's still room to grow on it, but clearly that analysis was well received in that their goal is still to help people get protein on the plate, and let's kind of lower the permit cost. Because we also included in that analysis some cities within our state that do or don't have permits. Some cities just allow you to have them without needing a permit, while others had a much lower cost or lower restriction size on the number of chickens and the size of the coop kind of stuff. So I thought the city was pretty responsive.
Michael, also, if I may interject on the front of the urban agricultural land ordinance and the Grow Winston-Salem, of course, you know, that is a priority of mine, and I have been doing the community garden site visits to assess, you know, where are the community gardens at? Are they active? For what purpose are they serving? Are there any challenges they're facing? And so, as you all know, with COVID, some of these things got kind of backlogged for a little bit, but that is a major priority of mine. And we will, you know, work together on this if that's an interest of the council, to make sure we have clarity around those two moving forward. So I think, you know, we only have a small amount of time before council. Usually presentations are about 10 minutes. and with time for some for questions from City Council. So we want to keep it short, but I think it does make sense to include that in the next directions piece and have it clear around urban agricultural ordinance and Grow Winston-Salem, if you all choose to do so.
Thank you, Tiffany. Now, I know it's been a challenge, but I do think that, you know, we both of us have talked about that. I think that's going to be I think it's kind of important. I would like to hear somebody else from the council speak on it, their thoughts on it.
So, I mean, I think it's very important, Michael, and I think also it remains important to the city in that, again, to me, it was a penny in the bucket, but when we did that one specific part of the urban ordinance analysis with the chicken policy, they moved quickly, and I'm not saying it made it fully accessible to everyone, but there was a responsiveness. And so perhaps they're highlighting in that future directive, in a way, the food summit is part of the data collection and collaboration, bringing people together virtually, obviously, but also that assessing each component of that ordinance is a thing that we're going to do, because when I look at like that link that was sent out, right, it covers the community gardens, which I know City Council person Scipio, who's on our meeting today, chatted about, right? And I know we've done a lot of work over the years on looking at some of those community gardens or standards. We've certainly done a lot of work around general standards. The chicken one would be on the urban livestock. So yeah, I think really setting ourselves to work more on those major directives of the urban agriculture ordinance is a great future direction. What do other folks think?
I told you I was going to just listen in today, but I do think that one of the things I see is that you need to really use marketing to promote these initiatives, because I can guarantee that most people don't even know we have an urban agriculture policy unless they're really into agriculture, but the mainstream people probably don't know it. And I think you as a committee could use marketing's help to do social media or any of our print media to really promote the things that you really want the community to know about and get engaged in, because you're not actually doing the gardens or the farms. You want people to do that. And so you've got to motivate them to do that. And but I think your brochure needs to be very comprehensive in what you do as a council and all the many facets of how you've tapped into the community, whether it was a little or a lot. Just put it out there so it will whet people's appetite about wanting to join in whatever this movement is about urban agriculture. I looked at the ordinance and, if you want people to do urban agriculture, and the first thing is a $25 fee for a permit. The city needs to make money on everything. However, sometimes that could be a deterrent for people, that it's not really worth the effort. So I think you've got to sort of market these things, because you have a passion doesn't necessarily mean everybody has the same passion. And you might want to think in terms of where you can do a pilot of some of them. I think that can be something that you as a committee could say, okay, here's what we really want to push in this city. And so you push it. And I would suspect that the council wouldn't have too many objections to pushing food production, as long as, that's just a natural thing. So I'm not supposed to talk. I'm just supposed to listen and observe. So that's it for today.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, that kind of brings me to remind the council, as well as let some of our new council members know that right before COVID hit, another outcome of that chicken policy analysis meeting that we had with Mayor Pro Tem Adams is she approved to fund a pilot program. I don't know if you call it a pilot program or not, but she approved an idea that the council had, which was funding 25 home vendors permits. And so I think one of the things we focused as a council is how do you make it financially cost effective, right? And me as the economist, I see a $25 fee as 3 to 4 hours of labor for someone that works close to minimum wage, right? That's a lot of time to then work and you're in the hole. You're not making money back yet, right? You got to grow a lot of produce to make back that $25 rather than just going to the grocery store to buy it.
What?
So Mayor Pro Tem Adams had approved, I think it was 25 home vendor licenses, and we were going to do little pop-ups in specific neighborhoods. And part of that was less reaching out directly to marketing, but going to where people were and were thinking about vending or already growing, and saying the city's willing to sponsor that sort of last mile problem, which is paying for the license, right? And it makes it more viable rather than paying that $25 license. Once COVID hit, going into people's neighborhoods and also saying sell food right from your front yard, none of it was sort of the right timing. But I think some of the work we've tried to do has loosely aligned with that. We're just not there yet. So I thank you for that suggestion.
I'm just going to say one more thing, just a little personal history. My job as a child, I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My chore was feeding the chickens in the backyard. We had chickens. Ducks, geese, had a rooster, had 2 dogs, had birds. But anyway, the reason all of that was because my guardian, that's what she had growing up. So she had a small garden, and then she had her chickens, and the chickens were just for our household. And, people don't have that experience now. So part of it is also exposing people to that whole concept of why in the world would you want to have a live chicken in your backyard or chickens? Why? Because that's so foreign from people's routine now. But she grew up on a farm, and so she brought that with her to the city. And it wasn't foreign to me, and it wasn't foreign to a lot of other kids on our block, but we live right in the city. So part of what you want to do is also reintroduce that whole concept of having your own food that you grow. You go out in the backyard and you get you some fresh strawberries. Is it work? It could be, but it is called necessity if you don't have. It was a necessity for us. It didn't seem like it was work. It was just what you did. Go out and pick the green beans in the garden and plant them. But so you've got to show a different lifestyle to people where this is foreign. And I think it's a real possibility to do a lot of diversity, because I know some of our Hispanic families have brought that home garden and the animals in their backyard. I remember my grandson, I was visiting him. He was about 7 years old, and his little friend was Hispanic across the street. He got invited to the goat killing. You know, that was a big deal to have a goat and to slaughter it and it was like, wow. But his little friend, that was natural for them. So it's a good way to bring cultural diversity too. And some of those programs you could actually sponsor as a committee.
And I think that's a great idea. And I think also some of it is looking at where some of the ordinance can be improved to make it more viable or cost effective. And the cost is not just the money, but it's also the labor, right? And that was one of the things in the chicken policy is you can only have 5 and you can't have a rooster. Well, your break-even point changes if you got to always buy chicks and feed the chicks more expensive feed rather than being able to keep that life cycle going, you know? Urban agriculture or some of this grow your own food to me also recognizes not everyone has access to land. So how do we train people in container gardens, the community gardens, but also to those who have a wider food budget to know the labor and resources involved in food production may make people more willing to spend money on local farmers, knowing it's jobs, it's land stewardship, et cetera, you know, and I think I see some of that at, for example, Cobblestone. People are very comfortable to pay, you know, $8 for their heirloom organic tomato. But really also what they're doing is cultivating relationships with people in their community and valuing the labor that goes into it, valuing the land use that goes into it. And so trying to connect that to more parts of our community outside of just, let's say, promoting the food production. For some people, whether that's lack of access to land or lack of access to time, we might not ever get a yes on that, you know, but really casting a wide net on some of those aspects. What do some other folks think?
I think also it was to be made clear whether with those 24 vendor vouchers or whatever, would that also allow for the farmers market pop-ups? You know what I mean? Because I think we were looking at whether the ordinance, agricultural ordinance, as opposed to the Grow Winston, one or the other, or both, allow for the farmer, the urban farm, and also the farmers market. So that will be one thing that I'll be wondering about. And if so, if it's allowable, that's a great thing to promote. So like you said, you don't have to go all the way to Cobblestone to go to a farmer's market. You can have a farmer's market right in your community. And with anything we might be doing on Liberty or whatever, that's just showing, you know, as an example of what can be done in your own community.
Yeah, so in the essence of time, let's think about scheduling a time to practice the presentation, see also if, you know, who wants to present. Because also, like, I'm pretty excited to get to our new business items. And I also just want to, yeah, so our presentation is scheduled for February 9th at 4:30 p.m. It is a virtual presentation, but there I think, you know, what we did last year, which was a few of us, many of us presenting, worked well, but part of the reason it worked well is we practiced. I'm not saying anybody likes to practice, but we're getting up in front of our elected officials and just kind of want to make sure that we are very cohesive and kind of on the same page. So the presentation is Tuesday, February 9th at 4:30. It will be virtual, but I think that we should schedule at least one practice session. And the way that'll work is we'll do it on Zoom and pull up the slides and run through it a few times. So I know our presentation last year, there's a link if you want to watch it, but basically we each kind of took a slide and then tag teamed around, right? So someone said the first one, then we went to the next speaker, said the second one. Who thinks they might be interested in presenting?
As much as I love speaking in front of city council, I have a prior engagement at 4:30 on that day, unfortunately. So I am unable to help there.
Thank you, Scott. So I'm a yes. See, I know on our annual report, yeah, so here, Michael, Tuesday, February 9th, 4:30. See, I know Tambila and Brandon are also on sort of our annual report subcommittee. What do y'all think? All right, I mean, the M&Ms, we can show up. Michael and I, we can really, knock it out of the park, but would anyone else like to help present? Knowing there's also the joy of practicing on Zoom.
I have a question, just since we're not having many volunteers. I can't do it because my meeting is a Zoom meeting. So never mind. I was going to see if I could double dip, but I can't because it's 2 Zoom meetings at once. What time? So I know last year we kind of sat there for a while. Do we have a set time of when we will be doing it?
We do not, and it also has to get approved before we are put on the agenda. So we are shooting to do this in February, and that's why I've held your calendars for that day. But I do have to submit a request form for us. So we don't have a specific time, unfortunately.
Well, I will double dip that day, and I'll borrow my daughter's iPad, and I'll have one Zoom meeting going, and I'll kind of just excuse myself and give a quick presentation when I need to.
Okay, thank you. Michael, before you pop off, if you're still here, my thought is, what if we practice the Tuesday before?
Michael has hopped off.
He has already. Scott, are you always busy on a Tuesday afternoon?
Nope, just that one.
All right, would that work? And I can follow up with Michael? I just thought like a week in advance seems, what do you think?
When and what time again?
So the time is somewhat flexible with me, although I kind of know your Tuesday schedule. So there it would be like Tuesday the 2nd, February 2nd is a Tuesday, and maybe at like 4:30, or if you liked a little later, that could be fine too.
4:30 works for me.
4:30, all right. I'll follow up with Michael and see if that works as well. And Tiffany, would you want to join us for that?
I will, and in likelihood, Mr. Taylor will also join us for that. He will be present at the presentation as well.
Okay, excellent.
And actually on that note, real quick, because Mr. Taylor was just joining us for a brief time, if he could he wanted to give you all a quick note about the market.
Just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for your efforts in this year that we've just come out of, considering the pandemic. And I am very grateful. And I noticed, I visited several of the events, and it seems like that it is creating some energy, and it's providing opportunity in the community for those individuals to be able to get fresh produce and things of that nature. So I just wanted to commend the council and thank you for your efforts. And Tiffany and I have had some very, very good discussions about our progression and some of the things that were mentioned tonight. And I'm excited about what we're going to be able to accomplish. So thank you. Your commitment to assisting this as it moves forward.
Thank you very much. And thanks for coming out a number of times as well and all the time that you invested. I think it's a great time to transition to new business. Tiffany and I touched base a couple weeks ago, and she shared with me some really exciting news. Tiffany, did you want to share it with the council?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So in having conversations with Mr. Taylor in the city, you know, we have had a lot of conversation about what is Liberty Street Market 2.0, so version of this year, look like. And like Mr. Taylor said, we've seen the success of the market and how many people have been coming out and how the vendors have enjoyed it, and are appreciative of the grant you applied for and what we received and what we were able to do with it. And so because of all the success, we do want to continue it within the city. And it will be under my hat with food resilience and with your continued advice, of course, in your role as the Urban Food Policy Council. So I'm excited to see what comes out of this moving forward, and just that we're going to keep it in-house and the city recognizes your efforts and the success of it all. So exciting.
Thank you for sharing that, Tiffany, and for all of the support from the city, right? I think that, you know, from Mr. Taylor, as well as, you know, Ken Millett, who came out to the market and was really supportive, as well as folks behind the scenes in finance, working on the SNAP EBT hurdles and such. It was really a great opportunity for the council to work directly with a number of persons and offices at the city in a time when it was hard to work together during COVID, but also really approach one of our duties that until this point we hadn't really been able to do much in one of our assigned duties from the city, which was the Liberty Street Vendors Market. And certainly I think I speak for the entire council to say we are extremely appreciative, Tiffany, for your leadership and support and countless hours of labor and doing everything to always unabashedly support this effort. I appreciate it. We all do.
Thank you. I'm happy to. I love this work, and I'm glad to get to work alongside each and every one of you. So thank you.
All right, so I would say the last part of our agenda is the food summit, right? And so that's something that certainly in the next year is a big project that we're all really focused on taking on. To me, I see it's most feasible to plan for it to be virtual unless we are planning it to be in the fall and an audible as to whether it may be virtual or not. But what do folks think there in terms of the food summit?
My first question will kind of influence my answer. When would the projected date of the Liberty Street Market reopening happen?
So I can speak to that. Mr. Taylor and I were actually speaking about this earlier today. And we think as soon as possible, the market should happen. So as soon as the warmer weather starts to hit, we should get it going again. I think, the food summit, whether it occurs virtually before or after the official relaunch date, the feedback will still be critically important. Just because we're doing it for the second round doesn't mean that we aren't going to need to pivot, aren't going to need to create more community partnerships, and just in general aren't going to need to adjust. So I think if possible, it might make sense to do it sooner rather than later. I know our vendors and farmers are eager to share their input. But if it has to wait a little bit, that's fine too, because we're going to be constantly growing and changing in the next several years as we grow the market.
Okay, then question, I guess, 1.B. I know that a lot of people probably wouldn't be interested in, this is just me, would maybe find more interest in having it live? Is it something that we are able to do as it gets warmer at Liberty Street Market and just kind of have it as a floating thing there?
So when you say live, Scott, you mean in person but outside?
Yes, ma'am.
So our Food Summit Working Group, which consists of Brandon, Michael, and Jacqueline, have been meeting with myself to talk about what the format could look like. And we originally talked about possibly doing it virtually sooner rather than later. And Jacqueline suggests a 3-day short kind of each day talking on a different topic that we were trying to cover. You know, the hosting it in person at a later time is appealing, certainly, because you are bringing community to the space, maybe folks who are selling, but also who would potentially buy from the market as well. But this is y'all's event. I don't know what you all think you would like to do, Brandon and Jacqueline, especially as you all have provided impact from the work group sessions.
It doesn't really matter to me whether it's virtual or live. Getting input sooner from everybody we were aiming towards gives us more guidance on what the community is doing about food insecurity and what direction we need to go. So getting the input sooner will help us with this year, how this is going to happen. So, you know, to me, earlier virtual still would probably give us more input from these folks.
Okay, that kind of sold me. So earlier the better.
I hear about it. Hold on. Did the working group have a sense of when early, like I think previously we had talked about maybe March?
Right.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know what, a better question is, for folks in the working group, would y'all like to share what you've been working on and talking about?
Would Jacqueline or Brandon like to share? Would you like me to share the notes and summarize either way?
Sure, you can summarize, Tiffany. Share the notes and summarize.
Jacqueline, is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull this up really quickly. Can you all see this? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So the Food Summit Work Group has met twice, once in December and once in November. We had brainstormed a little bit about who would be invited to attend, some grassroots folks, and we wanted racial diversity as well, along with experiential diversity. As the Urban Food Policy Council discussed in the last meeting that we had the opportunity to discuss the Food Summit, we wanted to talk about two topics, urban farmers market, specifically Liberty Street, but it could extend conversation into other markets as well, and then community gardening and the Grow Winston-Salem program and urban agricultural land ordinance. We had discussed about doing this virtually. The council as a whole, I think, discussed the late February, early March time period. I had only captured late February here, but March was fine as well. And the work group thought, all three members of the work group thought that a 3-day virtual summit would be best, a shortened time period on each day, but would have market at Liberty Street Market be 1 day, talking maybe a food pantry focused second day, and then the third day, home garden and community garden day. That's up for consideration for the full council, but the 3 members in that group did like that option. And we just talked about the need to establish clear, measurable outcomes for that summit. So what do we want to talk specifically about the Liberty Street Market? Do we want to talk about SNAP EBT transaction increases, increasing the number of food vendors, setting more regulations around growing practices and protocols and expectations and equitable access? And then for the community garden conversation, the hope was that we would talk about, can gardens become profitable or sustainable? How can you grow enough food to fill a market and buy supplies? And then it was also mention of the use of commercial kitchen spaces. What can be made available to community gardeners to be able to sell, or home gardeners to sell what they are growing, and to have clarity in general around the ordinances. I am trying to find you all now.
I think that sounds great. You know, I think it sounds really good.
I think it sounds good too. So what's the next step?
I think the next step would be for you all to decide, vote on, well, I think you already voted on timeline. So late February, early March was what we voted on last meeting. Probably the next decision would be voting on the number of days or timeline for how you would like it to be hosted, and perhaps talking about who you all would like to attend, because we've talked about this as a work group, but not as a full council, who should be in attendance, and are there specific measurable outcomes other than what's listed that are important to you? That's quite a few things. I can list them in the chat too, if that helps.
Yes, please.
Are you thinking consecutive days or like week after week kind of things for the summit?
Consecutive.
Okay. So are you talking about Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, or twice Friday and Saturday?
And Sunday.
Okay.
And something maybe where, like, could individuals sign up for some or all?
Right. They can sign up for whatever session is pertinent to whatever their focuses are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How long does it take to get the word out to people?
It depends on the medium. I'm sorry.
Pardon?
It depends on the medium.
Okay, working backwards. If you want this to happen in the middle of March, who needs to hear about it in the next 2 weeks?
You know, I'm not an expert, but to me, right around 3 to 5 weeks is the right amount of time. Once you go longer than 6 weeks out, some people might forget about it. They schedule it and it's so far in advance, right? But if it's only about a week or two, their schedule might be filled. So to me, I think something like very early February, start contacting folks. But again,
So
to me, right around a month, more than a month, it just seems people forget.
Okay, so it sounds like you're shooting for the middle of March, because then the 1st of February is 6 weeks out. Do you want the council members to suggest groups, or is your group list good enough?
You all should suggest as well.
For example, I know as a community garden mentor, we have a contact list of different community gardens. We have, I think, approximately over 60 community gardens. And I think by contacting some of the mentors, that can kind of spread awareness to get those to participate and to kind of spread the information to those who may have who may have interest or who may have some type of buy-in into the event. So I think that's one way to contact a lot of people in a small amount of time, who may be able to call, to contact other people, kind of piggybacking off of what was mentioned here in the chat in reference to inviting different neighborhood associations. I think being able to contact those individuals to kind of expedite that information, the invite.
And are you thinking about, like on day one, is it 1 hour or 2 hours, or in what kind of agenda? Is it speakers or conversation or surveys, or what's going to be?
From my understanding, it was more of a presentation, speakers and so forth, and closer towards the end on the final day, we're opening up to more of a Q&A format, where we have those who may have attended previous sessions, give them the opportunity to develop questions to give back or to address with the council, so.
Brendan is correct. I actually forgot to update that on the days, and I thought I had something wrong. So first day or the second day, one will be focused on the markets. Then the next day is on community garden. And then the third day is to bring folks together if they would like, because the markets and gardening piece are not separate from each other. They can very much be a part or come together. I was wrong in my listing that I showed you all. I'm sorry. Those are the 3 topics as Brandon outlined, or the format for the days.
And also contacting some of the stakeholders that we listed as vendors. I think contacting them as well, inviting them as well, would be another way to kind of, web out more individuals to attend.
Yeah, so what do you all think in a way of when we reach out to the community, stakeholders, to groups, to vendors, et cetera, having that reach out more via like a request for proposal, right? Rather than us scripting the whole thing, right? I'm inviting you, Brandon, to lead the presentation on community gardens, rather reaching out and saying, Brandon, as a leader within our community gardens community, we're hosting a food summit. Would you like to lead a session? And what do you think a good topic would be? Submit your idea, something like that. And that way, in a way, like, and again, some of my ideas are terrible, but that the folks who are sort of in various parts of our community are also developing in a way some of the structure around these 3 themed days. Right, y'all understand the difference? Like, rather than saying, Brandon, present on this topic, I invite you as the leader. But Brandon, I would like you to lead a session. What kind of session would you want to lead? What do you think would be a good topic? Something like that. What do you all think?
It's always good to get as much input as you can get, but if you want this to happen in the middle of March, then those kind of notes need to go out next week so that people have time to take it to their meetings and their groups, noodle it around a little bit, and then get back to you with a deadline.
I agree with you, Carol, that in the next few weeks, we need to reach out to the people who will be leading the sessions, and then perhaps, around a month in advance, register the participants.
To register the participants, you have to have a program.
No, I know. That's when I was saying a few weeks in advance, that was the reference I was making, not get the presenters and facilitators, right? I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
I have one question, and then I need to step off of here. I apologize. How long would each night last? What would the hours be? Do we know that?
We had actually in our work group not spoken much about which 3 days specifically, and I think that's an important discussion to have. I know Brendan voiced that he thinks Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a good option. but that is going to eliminate your folks who are, selling at markets on Saturday and usually harvesting on Friday.
Well, it depends on the time of year. The weather is not quite good in March.
Yeah. I just know from the Forsyth Food Chats perspectives, when we've been trying to plan those, that's been the feedback we've still received, even in this time, from farmers and vendors, that the weekend is not working for them. Mm-hmm. So it depends who all you want to be present.
And the thing too, we have to make sure that we remember the focus of the summit and the target audience and whom that we wish to participate. Are we trying to get new individuals, or are we trying to get established individuals who are already in production? So if we're trying to get a summit and we're trying to reach out to newbies, to neophytes, and try to incorporate more community engagement, most of those aren't involved in that type of extensive operation. It's going to require that amount of time. And most people, in this type of situation, have more free time on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sunday. So looking at it from that perspective, I think that may be more feasible as, in comparison to like a weekday, as far as having more participation.
I hear you.
I mean, it's just a thought.
I think that's, it's up for you all to vote on what you would like to do based on what you're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the subcommittee, the working group's been doing great work. I think perhaps if the working group, or Tiffany, since you've been kind of condensing everything that they're doing, could send something out to the entire council, and perhaps we can look at some of these specific, I don't think we have time today to vote on any of them, but I do think in a way, if another council person wants to join the working group, that's excellent. But that, as Brandon said, we need to kind of decide what's our focus. And I hope it's the first of many food summits. And so if this one focuses, let's say, on emerging producers, then there may be some different scheduling considerations, let's say, than established or larger scale producers, especially if it takes place sometime in March, when the harvesting and the number of markets is not as significant as, let's say, June, right? So that's kind of my thoughts, is maybe we can send here's where we're at right now, and make some decisions. But I don't know that we have time to vote. So perhaps some of those broader decisions are things we'll take up at our next meeting, right? Like vote on the actual dates. But I do think our first focus needs to kind of be deciding who are the facilitators or presenters, because they're going to need more time to get ready than just participants. What do you all think?
Sounds great. Is it possible for us to take action on emails, or do we have to actually have a Zoom meeting and all that sort of thing?
We cannot officially vote, but we can communicate and do work.
Let me ask you a question. Is there a listserv of current stakeholders that are affiliated with the Urban Food Policy Council that we can kind of reach out to?
We do not, as an Urban Food Policy Council, have a specific listserv, although from the Urban Farmers Forum, I'm assuming we probably have the list from that. And also through Think Orange, which is our hunger awareness program, we do have a list as well. So okay. Probably between all of us, we can pull a pretty sizable list together. But we'd probably want to go through those depending on if the focus, like you all were talking about, is the emerging.
Because if we did the listserv, we can kind of do invites via Eventbrite. Is that correct? To kind of
yes.
Start the registration process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. We can't make official votes outside of a meeting.
Right.
technically to send emails to more than 2 people on the council. Tiffany sends them out BCC. That's a city
Gotcha.
preference policy somewhere in between. But we can certainly do work, right? Which is, we've decided these are the days or these are the themes, right? And then once we have our next meeting, make an official vote, you know? I don't think we can do everything all at once, right? So I think if the working group has kind of looked at this focus of this first food summit being the emerging, or I liked your word, Brandon, neophyte vendors, that's a great first one. And then perhaps then we have another one which looks at more established, and maybe eventually, and when we can be in person, we bring everyone together, you know? But we got to start somewhere, you know? So I think it's better to do a small scale food summit with a specific focus. Try to do it, let's say, in mid to late March before people are really busy, when the weather's good, especially because a number of council people have sort of asked us to ensure that we're doing this, you know, so to at least say we started and here's going to be our next one. You know, I don't know how you do a large scale, everybody included in one, especially in COVID times. You know, I don't think it's possible.
Right, I get ambitious in these things.
I think you guys have done a great job and have a good structure. So I hope that we can do some email back and forth that will make the next meeting be all action oriented.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel, like, how would you feel about maybe drafting like a request for proposal that the subgroup could use to send out, or that any of us could use to send out to see if people want to present or facilitate? Is that something you've done before?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. I mean, I thought you had a really good point in terms of like when you need to invite the presenters and stuff, right? And so I think all of us will kind of send it to various networks, but did you have a sense of sort of the style or wording of how to send that out, right? Such that if we all had, I don't know what to call it, an evite, a paragraph or something that we send out to individuals, that it's appropriately scripted.
I don't have one of those as boilerplate just sitting around someplace. I do think if your aim is for emerging people, then it makes a little bit more sense to be more structured going in and saying, newbies, here's the data dump. You know, we want to know what you think, we want to know what you need, but here's somebody who can talk to you about the vacant lots, and here's somebody who can connect you up with the extension service, and here are your dates, and here's somebody who can help you test soil and make sure it's not full of heavy metal, you know, all that kind of stuff. If the goal is for a mixed bag, that they're not all newbies or other kind of people, then to say who would like to present has a little bit more validity. If I was trying to get started as an urban farmer, I would have more questions than the ability to actually present. I mean, Brandon, you would be an obvious person to speak because you are involved with community gardens. If I wanted to start one, I would want to pick your brain. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, as you evolve the idea, it seems like you need the experts first. And one.
I think that's what I was asking is like, would you be comfortable
no.
developing a way that we could invite the experts, not identifying them, but like, here's the invitation for individuals who know the experts to send. But I respect the answer now.
I'm happy to do that once I get a little bit more information. I mean, I have to say at this point, I am extremely frustrated because I feel like I've gotten into the middle of a play and I don't know where it started. I'm not real sure where it's going. And I'm afraid that I'll say something that's really stupid and hurt somebody's feelings because I don't know the history.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to screw it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I get some, when Tiffany sends out the stuff she's going to send out and I get a more clear sense of where this is going, then sure, I can wordsmith all day long. I've run all kinds of programs over my zillion years of life. So I do know that it takes a while to get people on board with stuff. For example, and it's a stupid one, but if you wanted to do a home tour, you have to start a year in advance. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do, who you want to show up, how many people makes it successful. I mean, is this like a put your toe in the water and see how it works kind of thing? Or is this we need to make a splash right away so we can make the Liberty Street Market work really well? So yeah, once I know a little bit more about what this is all about, then yeah, I can write stuff for you.
All right, so what does the subgroup think about then, as sort of a way to wrap up, because I also want to respect time that we're over our time for a meeting, but how might the working group feel about narrowing and defining kind of the mission and the target audience for our first food summit?
I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe we can share that among the council and somewhat start to plan around time frames and things like that. And
I think they make it more measurable. I think they make our outcomes more measurable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And make it more of gives us more of an outcome-based feel.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Yeah, so I think, we'll look for that, and then I'll probably reach out directly to the subgroup to make sure when we set our agenda for next month that we get the exact right bullet items, because I expect there'll be a number of things related to the food summit that we'll want to vote on as a council, this is the space for us to do that. How do you all feel about that?
Go for it.
All right, well, anyone have any thoughts or closing items they want to share?
I did want to share my ideas about the, 2.0 market, but we have covered a lot. So can we put that on next meeting that I can share my ideas about the market 2.0?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Definitely, and I know a number of council members have already dropped off, but at any point there's an item that you as a council member would want on the agenda, feel free to reach out to myself or Tiffany and we'll make sure to put that on there.
I thought I did email y'all with my ideas and said I wanted to talk about it.
Yes, and that's why I think the Liberty Street next steps was on there, but I agree it was a long meeting for us tonight. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll save them for the next meeting.
All right, and I'll be sure to put you directly on the agenda related to the topic too.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? No? Well, I thank everyone for their time today. I do hope that I have small kids. It was 5:20. I do hope that even if you're not presenting, that you're able to kind of join in the live stream or watch it after our annual report. And I know Tiffany will keep us posted on kind of the exact time and whether that gets scheduled in February or not. And as always, I appreciate everything you do on behalf of the council and our community. So I think someone needs to motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
I second.
All
You
those,
can do all, yeah.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Good night,
Take care, y'all.
everyone.
Good night.
Be well.